Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Monday. It's November 29th. This will be our chart lesson for the day. And it looked like we had some fireworks on Friday. I didn't even look at the market till this morning, so I didn't realize we had this big sell-off on Friday. Um, Lately, when I get a chance to take a vacation, I take a vacation, and I just don't look at the markets. And I think it refreshes you and helps you get back on track. But anyway, I hope everybody had a great break. And if you traded Friday, looks like there was some good movement to the downside. Um, we've kind of been in this range here. I really think the range is more like this right here. And you see that gives us where we went to. We got a perfect measured move down and bounced, and we're right back inside the range again. We've pretty much been in this range since first week of the month, around the first of the month. So we just pretty much gone sideways this first couple of weeks. We're still looking for that measured move. Maybe we'll run on up and meet that now. Um, at this point, though, it's looking like we didn't make that, so we had this big sell-off, and but you can see we moved almost a perfect measured move before we turned up, and we just got an inside bar here, so we'll just have to see what the rest of the week brings. But we did get down here back into a usual this green area is generally a place you would expect prices to bounce if we're not in a downtrend. If we go back and look, you can see we've bounced at that green area quite a few times in the past. So that's where you would expect prices to bounce if we're not in a downtrend, which we're not. So again, we'll see what prices bring. And but let's go over and look at the 2000 tick chart, and we haven't really gotten back from what we lost Friday yet, but we got a good, probably 2/3 of it back. So we're right back into the range again. But let me flip chart. Okay, here's our daily chart, and you can pretty much see that the majority of this day was sideways. We traded up in the overnight, went into this range. We had a little breakout here that failed, got back in the range, and you can see there's a lot of buying going on. Prices couldn't sell off. They just couldn't get through that resistance until finally they let it sell off. We tested the bottom again, and then prices ran on up. We had a rally that lasted maybe from, I would say we started up around 10 o'clock, and this lasted all the way to right into the noontime hour, and then we just went sideways to down after that. So there is a bigger channel here. Another trader sent me this. I wasn't really looking at this bigger channel, but it's correct. You can see the midline coming into play. And but you didn't really need it because we still had this support, and that's where we bounced. And so if you saw this, that's great. If you didn't, only thing it might have helped you with, it might have helped you to find this this move up here to the midline. But I think the trading range gave you everything you needed to know until we broke out here. And then I would have been trading this yellow and probably this gray channel after that. So I'm going to go ahead and take this off. But if you saw that, it does look correct. And it might have helped you with these trades here, but I think they set up okay regardless. So, but let's zoom in, go over to the start, and go through the trades. We had our first trade just a little after 7 o'clock right here. 7 o'clock came just as we're kind of turning back down here. Try to make a new low. This is a second entry long. Notice we just came up, we had a failed break. This is a fairly strong sell-off, so it's a little bit convoluted right in here, but there's a channel working up here, and that's the first break. So with that big, strong bullish bar, you probably get a scalp out of that. When you get the failure here and a nice signal bar, definitely go long there. This one, you could argue maybe for this one to be green, but the fact that it went lower first and turned and then went out the upper side and closed above the EMA, that's a good sign that we're probably going to continue higher. And this turns out to be, I mean, really all you're looking for is a scalp here. But this turns out to be a really nice move. I mean, you're expecting prices to probably go up here. So I don't know if you get a runner or not because this one does back up again. So probably didn't get a runner if you're playing at break even or break even plus one. If you gave it any more room, you probably would have got a runner there. And you don't really get another chance to enter this trade. It runs up, you get your first break, and you have kind of a repeat setup right here. Notice the difference though, because there is another failure right here. There's a new low and a first entry, second entry. But I thought I would show this because there's been a couple of conversations in the forum going on about when to know to take these trades and when not. First of all, notice this failure is not at the EMA. That's strike number one against it. The actual signal bar doesn't matter. Actually, probably the more bearish it is, the better, because the idea behind these is they trick people. But the second strike is, notice how close it is to high. You don't have room to scalp out. I think this trade would have worked anyway, but it's not one I would take. And I put this arrow on here just to point it out, just so you can see the difference between this failure and this failure. And the real difference is this one sets up right off the EMA, and this one, look how far. You just don't enter real far away from the EMA because the EMA is a moving average. And so prices tend to stay close to that moving average. And when they get too far away, it's just a matter of time before they're going to come back to it. So you got to be real careful on a trade like this. So I wouldn't take that trade, long or short. And of course, we get the break here, a couple legs up to a new high, and then it sells off. There's no short set up here either. There's no failure. There's no lower high. It just runs straight down and goes into this range. Now, we did try to go higher once, twice, and then three times, and you got this really bearish bar. So there's a triple test right there. So I like going short on that one. Plenty of room back to the lows. We bounce, but again, there's no room, and then we're just stuck in the upper half. So again, there's no trades in there. I only see one short that I really like there. Unfortunately, you don't get to catch this run down. There is a break higher right there with that big bearish bar. There's just not much room here. Again, way away from the EMA, and you see it's not long before it snaps back. And then it runs over here, and then it's just kind of chopping sideways, both sides of the EMA. Don't trade that. It's really hard. There is some support here, but you just can't really trade that. I wouldn't go short or long in that stuff right there. Same thing here. There's a setup here where you notice you got a new swing low there and a first entry, second entry, and there is a little bit of a trend working up, but it's just so sideways, and there's no setup here. Here you do get a decent signal bar, but look at all that congestion, and there's not much room back to the highs. There's maybe enough room to scalp out there, but because of all that congestion, and then see that side, that little tiny doji that couldn't break higher right there, that's not a good sign for prices going higher. So I'd skip this trade, and you can see it. It goes just enough to trap a bunch of longs, and then it sells off again. Stay clear of that stuff right there like that. Don't try to, don't count. Look, when you're going sideways like this, and even here, don't count second entries and don't count failures. If you get a good setup and it's also a second entry or a failure, yeah, that adds a little momentum to it, but don't look for trades based on second entries and failures. Just don't do it. So no entries in here. This one's tempting, but there's just that support hadn't been proven, and on the bigger picture we got a failure, so we could go lower, so you could get trapped there. And we run back up and we just keep trying, and finally you got a high here, and you try to test it once, twice, and you get a big bearish bar for your signal bar. I like going short on that one. Got plenty of room back to the lows. It bounces. Unfortunately, you don't get a setup here. It's not a good enough signal bar. That's too bearish. Runs back up here, and you test that high again with another big bearish bar. Go short right there. This time it just keeps going. And you should have got a runner out of this one. It just keeps going. Try to go higher once, twice, but again, look at that congestion. You could call that a failure. It's not quite back to the EMA. Just not a very good setup. Yeah, it would have worked, but you wouldn't have got much more than that out of it. Then, of course, we run up here. This looks like this is sideways stuff, so that does not look like a leg up. So the way you got to count this, I still mark this as a second entry, but it's like what you call a hit. This is just one. Count this as 0, and you move up, and you get a first entry short, and then a second entry. You don't see a first entry right here, but you can tell prices went up, pull back, went up, and there's also, you could argue, a triple test here. We try to go higher once, twice, 3 times. I didn't draw my line across there, but there's resistance across there. And you can see that. And there is a hidden second entry, and you could technically count this as second entry, but to me, if this was a bullish bar, that would look like one leg up, and I would wait. But since you got the little swing, you can clearly see the 2 swings there, and you can clearly see the triple test there. Lower high here with a big bearish bar, but that's right into the lows from earlier. Look how many times we bounced there. Don't try to get short into that. And notice what happens. We bounce, you get a first entry, and there's a second entry right there, but I don't trust that second entry since we just came off the lows. But when we make a lower high with that big bearish bar, if we break lower there, I like going short. And what you might do, there's still a little bit of stem, but that's definitely a bearish bar. What you might let it do is break lower right here and then drop a limit order back where you would have entered on that bar, because technically that's when this bar went past there, that's when it triggered the second entry. So after it went higher here and it came back through, that's when it triggered the second entry. So you might have used that, and you could have easily done that, but I'd be okay just putting the sell stop right there and trying to get your scalp. You got plenty of room back to the lows here, and that's what you want to see, plenty of room. And of course we do bounce higher, and that is a second entry long, but that looks like congestion. Skip over that. We're below the EMA, and we're just kind of working sideways, although there is a little bit of an upward movement here. You just don't get a good setup. Now, you do get a first entry, second entry right here, and this broke lower first, and it does come off that trend line, but it's an engulfing bar, so wait for it to close, and then it closes with some stem, and then the next bar can't break higher. That's dangerous going long there. It would have worked, but I'd skip it, and then we just start going sideways again. Now, finally, to the downside, you do get a little triple test here, and that bar gives you enough room to get out back before you get to these highs. So if you took that one, I'd be okay with it. It's not a great setup, but it is a little failed break lower. It might propel prices all the way back to the highs, which it does, but it comes back again before it does. But you would have got a scalp out of that with no problem. And then it comes back again. So really, you've tested that multiple times, and now you got a big bullish bar, and it's right at a possible key entry point. So you might go long there. Notice it closes above here. I think you're better off to wait on a higher low, which comes here, but your signal bar is no good. And by that time, you really already pushed up here. But notice how you pushed through fine. Look how many times we tried to get through there and we couldn't. It took this trapping some shorts here to get it through there. And then we finally came back and noticed it tests this low once, twice, and then goes higher. I still don't like going long there. But if you wait just a minute, you get another little double test, and it's right off that gray trend line. Plenty of room to get out before here, and off it goes. And there's actually a little pullback right there, but I don't like going long right into that high. That's pretty much the high of this move. It's not the high of the day, but it's the high of this move, and it's close to the high of the day. So I just don't think you want to go long there. Same thing here. You move on up, and you just kind of go sideways. No real setup there. It's too congested. And it just continues to work higher, but you don't get a good setup. You might have gone long by here, but again, notice you got the actual signal bar would be an inside bar. I'm not crazy about those. There was a second entry long right here, but we're off the top of this yellow channel and hadn't come back. We're due to come back. So, but there is a first entry, second entry, and you make a new high, and this is just a first entry right here with an inside bar. So I just think you're better off, even though you could probably say, hey, there's a little double test right there. I don't think it's worth taking. Then we break out and fail, come back, first entry. There's a second entry here, pretty decent signal bar. There is a previous low right there, but you're below the EMA and you're probably coming back to here at a minimum. I'd wait on that trade, and you can see what happens. It traps people, and then it ends up going, it traps all these longs right back out, and then it ends up going right where you thought it was going to go, but it finds resistance there again. That one's tempting to go short on, but I'd wait on a second entry or a lower high or something, and finally you get a first entry, second entry right there, and this broke higher and turned down. It makes a lower high, and so I like going short right there. You might have entered on that engulfing bar, but I'd wait on this to close and then go. Actually, the way I would play this is I would let it break lower right there, and then I'd try to drop a limit order in, because you really don't have enough room right there. You're right into the midline. So the way to play this one is, but I don't like entering on these engulfing bars. I probably should. Let me just change that to green, because that should be green because of the engulfing bar. But yeah, this breaks higher, turns, then turns down and goes out. So your entry has to be right there on that second entry, because by the time it gets here, it bounces off that EMA and you're right into the midline. And I just don't like entering there. It would have worked even if you entered it right here. It kept going lower, but would you want to ride all that out? I doubt it. So I don't think I would enter on below here. So I'm going to change this to green, and if you entered it, you let it break lower below this bar, and then you let it come back, and you enter where you would have entered anyway, one tick below that bar, and that gives you room to get out pretty much here. I believe it does. Let me just see if that's even the case on that. It gives you a better entry anyway. Yeah, you got plenty of room to get out there. It gives you 2.5 points. So this would have been the lower high, but it never breaks lower, so then it breaks higher again. So that's still a lower high, but you try to go higher 3 times, and it's still right into the EMA, and there's still not a lot of room back to here, so I marked it green too. And of course this one does drop on down. There is a little bit of a trend line working down through there. It's still real sideways, but you can clearly see there's a downward bias to it. And then we just kind of go in, we get the close outside, try to move to a new low twice, and notice you made that low, you test it once, twice, and you got a nice bullish bar. I like going long there. You don't know that it's going to take off and go all the way back to the highs, but you should at least get a scalp out of that, because there's been a lot of shorts getting in here, and when they try 3 times to go lower and can't do it, it's going to bounce. You may not bounce all the way back to the top, but you'll bounce enough to get a scalp out of that. And then it just turns down off the high again. Because we did make a higher high here than the last few times, notice it's higher than this one, and these, and even this one. I'd want a lower high, and that doesn't come till here, and your signal bar is no good, and then we're into the after 2:30. So not much going on in the afternoon. It looked pretty good till about 10 o'clock, and there's a few trades in here, not many. So this one's real close to being red. I originally marked it red, but I think it's better green. So, but it's close. You could argue either way. But that's the way I saw it today. So nice rally considering Friday. Let's just look at that. Yeah, we had a huge sell-off. Most of that was in the overnight, but we did continue down. We didn't quite get a measured leg, it doesn't look like. If you measure that leg, just assuming you measure that day's leg, we don't even get close. So that tells you we may have a big rally when we couldn't go any lower. We missed that by a long shot. And then this morning, that was the first leg up, and then we start from the low point. We didn't quite get a measured move there. We came real close. Prices tried, but they didn't quite get a measured move. Let me back out a little more and show you that one again from a little higher perspective. But you can see that first leg up, and then that's the low point after the correction. And so we try to measure it. We didn't quite get there. So not a great trading day. We had some movement here, but just not any setups. And we've had a lot of that lately. We get some pretty good movement, but we don't get any good setups. And it's frustrating, I know, but just hang in there. Don't force any trades. And, the one thing I will say, the volume was really high today. So especially early on during the overnight, a lot of volume there compared to what we usually see lately. So maybe that was from people coming back in after the Thanksgiving holiday and need to make trades. Some of the institutions need to square up, and that's something that will happen towards the end of the year. Most of your professional traders and institutions, they'll stop trading, and I'll be on vacation the last couple of weeks of the year. I usually take off those last couple of weeks of the year. Doesn't mean you still won't get some movement or some good trading days, but since it is getting towards the end of the year, these institutions and the trading firms and all, they're going to start squaring up their books and closing out things, adding other things. So the next couple of weeks, going into the first week or two of December, might be some pretty good trading. We'll see. And then the last couple of weeks of the trading, it'll probably get real quiet and the volume will probably drop. And that's what usually happens. Now, it doesn't mean that's for sure what we'll see, but that's just kind of set that up for you. That's kind of what we'll probably see. So historically, that's the way it works. But anyway, I'm over 20 minutes today, so not much else we can say about this day. I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see